Hello, welcome to our Meet the Editors live stream. We're super excited you are joining us. For those of you who don't know, my name is Stephanie Whitetrup and I do digital marketing with Eerdmans. And I just thought this would be a fun idea to try and end our year with a little recap of 2022, get to meet our editors. Some of you may not know them, may not know some fun things about them. So we just thought, let's put them all on a chat here and get to know them a little bit more. So I am just going to introduce James Ernest. He's our editor-in-chief and vice president, and he's going to kick off this conversation, and I'll leave it at that. James.
Hi. Yeah, thank you, Stephanie, for setting this up. We editors are generally reclusive and don't like to talk to anybody. We hide in our individual offices and work on our manuscripts and books. But hey, Christmas is coming, so we're feeling a little bit festive, and we'd like to talk with you. I'm James Ernest. I try to take care mostly of the theology part of our list. We have several people. I have very gifted colleagues. Just looking over at my screen and taking things in order right now. We have Trevor Thompson. We'll wave to you maybe. Trevor is our editor, who's the chief guru in charge of all things early Christianity, Greco-Roman, etc. Next up my screen is Lisa Ann Cockrell. Lisa is our newest colleague, and she's the creative and the extrovert among us. She'll tell you maybe a little bit of the things that she's been working on acquiring. And then at the top of my screen, I see Andrew Knapp. Andrew is our expert for Hebrew Bible, Old Testament, early Judaism. And then all of us beyond the areas that I mentioned sort of work outside of our own specialties to try to bring the whole range of books that you're used to seeing from Eerdmans. So that's who we are. And I'm not going to talk the whole time at all. I'm going to ask Andrew to talk first because I think we wanted to give you just sort of a little retrospective of what we published in 2022.
Yeah, thanks, James. So yeah, in 2022, we published, I think, 78 new titles, which is fairly standard for Eerdmans. And we are continuing to publish in the areas that I think we are well known for. Most people, I think, associate us with biblical studies and theology and history of Christianity, and just a lot of other things related to the Christian faith, both in terms of sort of high-end scholarship and much more kind of public-friendly trade books. So in the biblical studies world, which again is one of my main areas, we published this year about a half dozen major new commentaries. Our big Old Testament Nikot series saw new volumes on Numbers, Deuteronomy, Ezra, Nehemiah, and Lamentations. In the New Testament world, we had a magisterial new volume on Romans come out by Michael Gorman. Thank you, James, for displaying some of these.
They happen to be.
And then, yeah. Elsewhere in biblical studies, we had just some of the ones that spring to mind. We have a book by Charlie Trim called The Destruction of the Canaanites that analyzes different Christian interpretations of the troubling passage of Israel's conquest. We have a book on sort of a womanist reading of the New Testament, so focusing especially on issues of race by Love Seacrest called Race and Rhyme. And just very recently, we have a book called Women and the Gender of God by a New Testament scholar, Amy Peeler, that came out that just pushes back on the default assumption of treating God as masculine. Yeah, and again, and many others. In terms of sort of non-biblical studies, just kind of general faith stuff, we continue to be all over the map. One that I worked on that was
in a good way.
Yeah, one that I had that was particularly fun was a book called Into the Headwinds. Just it was kind of a philosophical examination of the nature of faith by Terrell and Nathaniel Gibbons. James has brought in several academic monographs on theology, such as Khaled Anatolius's Deification Through the Cross on Eastern Christianity. And I believe James brought in Dale Allison's Encountering Mystery, which looks at just religious experience in a secular age in the 21st century.
You could say I brought it in, or you could say Dale sent it in.
Yeah. And then
potato.
Yeah, and then with us, Eerdmans, we want to stay attuned to important contemporary issues. And I mean, one book that we have in that world is Shannon Kearns's In the Margins, which is a memoir of a transgender man's journey with scripture. So yeah, we cover a lot of bases. Just one last thing I'll say before kind of handing things over a bit is Eerdmans, we're also continuing to focus on trade publishing, and so just much more kind of broadly usable books. Just two that spring to mind. We have a book called Gaslighted by God on sort of reconstructing disillusioned faith, and another one that I spent a lot of time with myself and have a lot of personal investment in is a book by Becca McNeil called Bringing Up Kids When Church Lets You Down, a book for Christian parents who are still faithful people, but people who have been maybe a little bit disillusioned by the specific faith that they grew up in and have serious questions. And yeah, and it's a really both insightful and kind of laugh out loud funny book on this subject. So yeah, that's just a small sampling of what we've put out in this past year. But I will stop rambling, and I will let Trevor talk about what's coming up for 2023.
Thank you, Andrew. We have a number of great books coming up in the season directly ahead of us. Editors, we get the joy. Authors always wait for their book to come out, and it's this big moment where book meets world. And as editors, we get to have that experience over and over and over again throughout the course of a year, which is a lot of fun to see the work that's gone into a particular book and how readers are going to receive and engage it. And so we're excited about a number of things. The books that I'm going to name now, and this is hard, I'm going to say, because there's a longer list, and there's really no way in this short amount of time that I can go through all of the amazing books. And so I'm just going to hit a couple of highlights, and I'm going to invite James, Lisa Ann, and Andrew to chime in and add commentary here or there as we touch on different things. We'll just kind of quickly make through what is up and coming, fresh on the horizon from Eerdmans Publishing. I'm going to begin where we just were with Andrew, and that is we have a couple of NICOT volumes, Andrew. The books Joel, Obadiah, and Jonah coming out in May, and then coming out in March, the book of Ruth. You want to say anything about that quickly, Andrew?
No, just that, yeah, the NICOT, our New International Commentary in the Old Testament, is kind of the flagship Old Testament commentary series we have. And yeah, we've had a lot of books coming down the pike, and a lot of them are excellent volumes. Ruth is actually, I think it technically publishes in March, but we've already seen the books here. It's spectacular, and yeah, good to have more coming down the chute there.
And I will then jump to the New Testament side. I'm really excited to see Con Campbell's pillar commentary on Ephesians, and I know a number of readers are quite excited to see that coming, replacing an older volume in the series. And so I know a lot of people are going to be excited about that. We have a couple of books coming up that are dealing with what is an ongoing problem and point of discussion in our culture, and that is simply information. Who generates it? What is true? What is false? One is a collection of essays called QAnon, Chaos, and the Cross: Christianity and Conspiracy Theories. And then we have another book similar called Faith and Fake News: A Guide to Consuming Information Wisely. So two books as we move in day by day to the heat and the muck, if you will, of the next presidential election. Mm-hmm. Two books from Eerdmans dealing with how to be discerning readers. And I don't know if any of my colleagues want to chime in on that, but it's certainly the presence of those two books on this list reflects deep commitments that I sense inside the press about helping readers navigate on the landscape of information. James, do you want to say something about that?
The editors that I work with, I'm so happy with them, because they each have their own specialized area in which they're really expert, but they're very tuned in also. I think Eerdmans published years ago a book by Fleming Rutledge, something like the Bible in the New York Times, and I feel like our editors have really retained that spirit. That is, we're interested in doing what we do in biblical and theological studies, but we're also very interested in watching the world and the church around us and trying to provide books that will meet needs that are current. Absolutely.
It gives life to the day-to-day process, and allows us to reach into spaces and hopefully get a hearing. Another series, the LRB, which is growing readers by the years. And Lisa Ann, Oral Roberts and the Rise of the Prosperity Gospel.
Yeah.
You want to say just a quick word about that?
Andrew, go ahead.
Oh, just say, we might want to just say the LRB is the Library of Religious Biography. For those who might not know our acronyms as well as we do.
Thank you, Ann. There is acronym ease inside the walls of a press, and it can. Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Okay.
The LRB. That was a series that actually Mark Knoll was kind of one of the primary forces around. A lot of our readers will know Mark, and he's brought in a couple of younger scholars who are helping him edit that series. Heath Carter at Princeton and Catherine Gin Lum at Stanford, and they're really starting to put their stamp on it and recruiting kind of emerging scholars from across disciplines, including journalists and other folks, to write volumes. And we're hearing great things. Jonathan Root did this project on Oral Roberts. I think Dan Vaca wrote the foreword for us on it, and it's a really interesting engagement. I think, Andrew, you actually got to dip into that a little bit when the manuscript came in, because I was out. And it's a really fun kind of readable biography that focuses on, his spiritual development. So, yeah. By the way, I should mention another book that's out right now that came out most recently in that series is Anne Blue Will's biography of Ruth Bell Graham, which just won last week. It was announced Christianity Today's Biography of the Year award. So congrats to Anne. And there's a beautiful cover. I really love that. Odd Cross to Bear. Ruth Bell Graham. So another, if you're still shopping for Christmas gifts, that one especially, I think, would be a great gift.
In the vein of books that pursue new directions and conversations, Lisa Ann, would you say something about Lessons and Carols, a meditation on recovery by John West?
Which I have right here.
Oh, look at this. So as Lisa Ann's colleague and friend, I remember the joy on her face as she brought it to the acquisitions committee, and I'm reliving that now. So can you say something about that?
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I was going to talk a little bit about two books this year, and so I'll just talk about this one now. This is the first book I acquired. So we're kind of coming to the end of my first year here at Eerdmans, almost to the week, because I took a little time off after I started, and this was the first book that I got to contract. And this is as a memoir written by the author is John West. He's a journalist with the Wall Street Journal, and this is a memoir about his journey with alcohol addiction, recovery, mental illness. And the real kind of nub of the question that he's working with is change possible? Another way of saying that is redemption possible? And it's just really delicious prose, or it's kind of like between prose and poetry in this space. Sometimes called lyric essay. And it's called Lessons and Carols, which some will know is an Episcopalian or Anglican Christmas service in which there's a Bible reading, a lesson, and then everyone sings a Christmas carol. And there's a cycle of 9 of these through the service. And John started hosting a Lessons and Carols gathering. We'll tell you something about the kind of nerd he is. When he was in college, he started hosting this as his kind of annual Christmas party, and he would play a carol, and all his friends would sing along, and then they'd take turns reading parts of Bible stories. Frankly, none of them believers, none of them Christians, but there's kind of this like interesting amazing community that started to develop around this gathering. And the format of the book kind of circles that annual, what is now, they just had it again last week at his new home in upstate New York. So it's a beautiful memoir. It comes out in May. You can pre-order it now. Like I said, this book right here, this is a advanced reader copy, so we're just starting to send it out to reviewers. I just think it's a beautiful reading experience, and I think I think it's a beautiful aesthetic experience for people who just love, beautiful literature, but also I think he's really insightful around the kind of like destructive loops that a lot of us grapple with in our lives in lots of different ways. So, yeah.
We often say in our meetings, and now for something totally different, I'm going to shift back into a different realm, which is that of politics. And we also will feature this January Miguel de la Torre's "Resisting Apartheid America: Living the Badass Gospel," which is Miguel's conclusion of the Badass trilogy, as we call it, a prophetic take on America and Christian nationalism, etc. But also want to mention here "Chasing the Devil at Foggy Bottom: The Future of Religion and American Diplomacy" by Sean A. Casey, with a foreword by none other than John Kerry. It's the story of the founding of an office inside the State Department that focuses on global religion and religion affairs as a way of informing American politics, both near and far. There's a couple of other books I want to mention, but I want to stop and just maybe I'll start what is to my top right and say to James, are there other books you want to talk about, launch forward right now with?
For the coming year in theology, I think we have a really interesting spread of things that shows kind of some of the long-term commitments and the current interests of Eerdmans in the theology area. A book that Andrew actually has been working on with Noah Leo Erskine is Black Theology and Black Faith. So that's of obvious contemporary interest. Something that I have, a couple of things that I've worked on that are starting to come to fruition this year, are in my beloved area of early Christianity, patristic theology, and so on. We have Alistair Stewart with a book which will finally explain for everyone about the connections between Eucharist and Agape Feast in the early church. Alistair is really great at reading all the documents and just untangling the threads that have been spaghetti for everyone and getting some kind of clarity. Francis Young's book on Scripture, The Genesis of Doctrine. This will be in the upcoming year, the first volume of a two-part opus she has on how doctrine and Scripture correlate in early Christianity. And Dan Migliori is a book, he's an author, but his book, Faith Seeking Understanding, has been used by so many theology students for so many years in so many settings. And we're going to be bringing out the 4th edition of that book in the upcoming year. So that's just a little bit of a sampling from our theology area.
Lisa Ann, I'll throw the same question to you in terms of what's up and coming. So, and yeah. I already see the glimmer in your eyes. You're ready to.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, as noted, like I'm kind of the newbie on the team, and one of the kind of interesting dynamics is, it takes a long time to write a book, and then it takes a little while to publish a book. And so a lot of this stuff, Lessons and Carols is the first book I signed up about a year ago. It's coming out in May. So there's a little bit of this interesting period for me in which I'm stewarding projects that I didn't necessarily have a hand in acquiring, but that I'm very happy to be, kind of working on. So there's a little bit of this like fuzzy zone for me before we start getting into the projects that I've, kind of been with from the beginning. But another project that's coming out, as folks will notice, I'm kind of the generalist on the team. I, kind of work across different categories, but I do a lot with personal narrative. And so we've got Lessons and Carols, this meditation and recovery. And then another book is Arthur Bohr's book, Shattered, which is a memoir, just a really beautiful memoir about growing up with an abusive father. And you know, that story is an important one for people to tell and to hear. But I think what really kind of elevates or like, you know, makes Arthur's kind of we talk about, you know, it's not just everyone has a story, but what makes a good book is the kind of meaning you make from your story. And I think what Arthur is doing is he's taking a close look at kind of he's a Dutch immigrant. His family is from the Netherlands, and kind of the trauma of the Dutch people that they experienced during World War II, and how a lot of that has reverberated across generations in intergenerational violence, and how it's related to notions of masculinity, and how that relates to kind of specifically in a kind of Reformed Christian milieu. It's a really interesting book that both, you know, Arthur kind of really beautifully, heartbreakingly kind of brings us into his own experience of abuse, but also sets it in a context that I think makes it, you know, kind of interesting. And I think people will be able to act, whether you're, you know, have any connection to the kind of Dutch immigrant population or not. Like, I think there's something there for everyone to kind of learn from and think about, you know, around masculinity and religion, and how these things play out in violence in our families often. So that's a project I'm really excited about. Weird to say. I'll also mention a project that we kind of just launched kind of recently, which is Padraig Tuma's. Some of you might be aware of the poet Padraig Tuma, who has a poetry podcast called Poetry Unbound. And he wrote a prayer book during COVID that I'm just thrilled that we're going to be publishing. I think it's going to come out in the coming year, though it might be on the bubble into 24. But that's another project that I'm really excited to be working on.
Andrew, how about you?
Yeah, so first, if I could actually do one more retrospective, just because Lisa was reminding me of, you know, kind of where we were last year and what we were doing at this time. And also you mentioned delicious prose. One of my memories from this season of last year is, I already mentioned it, but just getting the manuscript for the Into the Headwinds, the book, just looking at the nature of faith. And I remember getting it and starting to read and just kind of not being able to stop. And I remember I was doing a lot of work from a hospital at this time last year as my father was battling a pretty serious issue. And I remember just, sitting in the waiting room, just reading through that manuscript thinking, wow, this is a really beautiful book that we really need to publish. And and it just recently appeared. Moving forward, you've already mentioned a few of the things that I've been working on that are soon to appear. There's a few NICOT volumes. The Faith and Fake News is one that's dear to my heart. In the next few months, I think I've a lot of things I've been working on are kind of a heavyweight scholars who are coming out with some new books. Two that spring to mind are, we have a new book by Gary Anderson on he looks at the tabernacle narrative in Exodus and Leviticus, and then connects it to ideas of atonement and incarnation. And it's just like everything Gary has done, a really impressive work of both biblical studies and theology.
That will be titled That I May Dwell Among Them, Incarnation and Atonement in the Tabernacle Narratives.
Yes. And we also have a book by Richard Bauckham on the meaning of the Son of Man. So a book on kind of messianism, sort of, or not messianism, as the case may be, but exploring that incredibly loaded phrase that we have all heard so many times. I also have a book. We have a new commentary on Proverbs coming out, and that is actually going to be the second one in our commentaries for Christian Formation series, which the first one is Galatians by the one and only N.T. Wright. And so we're thrilled to be following that up with John Goldengay, who's just an absolutely ideal author for this series, and it's a really nice book on Proverbs. So yeah, lots of good stuff coming out in our world.
Andrew, I'm gonna supplement your list by mentioning New Testament Apocrypha, Volume 3. I don't want that to slide off the radar. I also just myself would like to. Robin Whitaker has a new book coming out entitled "Even the Devil Quotes Scripture: Reading the Bible on Its Own Terms," which is a really accessible but well-informed analysis of the way in which the Bible actually reads the Bible, which is not often what people.
And one of my all-time favorite Eerdmans covers, if I may jump in.
It's an arresting cover. We also have a new book from the Dean of Yale Divinity School, Gregory Sterling, "Shaping the Past to Define the Present," Luke Acts, and Apologetic Historiography. And also a book that I'm really excited about, Susan Hyland at Emory's, "Finding Phoebe: What New Testament Women Were Really Like," kind of cutting through a lot of the assumptions about what it was like to be a woman in the Greco-Roman world at the time of the first century. And yeah, really, really excited for readers to engage those. So,
well, did you ask one more thing that you wanted to throw in, or are you done?
I was just going to answer the pressing question that I think everybody who's watching this live wants to know. It's the question that I'm asked all the time. People text me constantly, and they ask, like, "Do you all really like each other?" Or,
yeah, lots of people are really wondering about that.
I mean, there's a reason we're in different rooms.
I mean, it's a hot topic, and I just want to affirm to everyone in the Facebook universe that yes, the Eerdmans editorial team, we are all very collegial. We get along. We like each other, and we're even friends. And we do occasionally entertain Lisa Ann's dad jokes. So that's
I've got some doozies.
That's the answer to that burning question.
We even like our other editors who aren't part of the acquisitions team, who do the work on the books, develop the projects. You know, Jenny and Laurel and Tom, and then there's other people who work with them. I like Alexander, our production vice president guy, who let me borrow his Christmas tree. So
I was just admiring that tree. You're like,
yeah, that's not me.
Especially festive.
That's
okay.
Yeah, so we're grateful for that. Someone in the chat mentioned our children's books, and yeah, we haven't talked about those on this half hour. This is a half hour dedicated to our adult program, but we love those too, and the people who work with us who bring those out. Kathleen and her people and in the EBYR, Eerdmans Books for Young Readers area. We like our boss, Anita. She puts up with us all. And yeah, I don't know. We're blessed to work with a really wonderful crew of people who, whether they're doing accounting, they're doing sales, they're buying the production, but they're people who love our books. They care about our readers, and that's what we're about. Trying to work together to produce books that you will enjoy, that will help you in your ongoing quest to integrate God, Bible, theology, church, world, and then around the peripheries of that, whatever sort of cultural and intellectual, spiritual issues that you have, whether you're a Christian or somebody who's outside of the church, interested in related spiritual questions. Eerdmans is all about trying to produce excellent books to serve you in all of those areas. So when when Stephanie told me that our go live time was 3 o'clock, I asked her, "Okay, what's our go dead time?" And she said, "Why don't you try to wind it up around 3:30?" So it's around 3:30. So I'm going to try to wind it up here. But I want to give Trevor, Andrew, Lisa Ann, got any last thing to say, or are you good?
I think I'll just mention one thing that I'm excited to do, which has been referenced kind of in Lessons on Carols and also shadowed by Arthur Boers. We have another book by Tiffany Kreiner coming out, which is a book of literary essays, is definitely like increasing something, kind of the books on our list that are also kind of self-consciously literary projects. And so for what it's worth, I just want to add that to the mix of the kinds of things that, Eerdmans is thinking about and wanting to cultivate is a space where people who really care about, literature and are also thinking about God and spiritual questions, that increasingly that's a kind of area that we're publishing in.
Yeah. Well, I'm supposed to mention to you, and I want to mention to you that we have an ebook sale going on now at Eerdmans. All of our ebooks are 75% off through the end of the year. So if you're watching this live, or if you're watching this afterwards, but it's before the end of, what year are we in? Is it 2022? Before the end of the year, be sure to hop onto your favorite ebook platform and buy everything, because it's all 75% off. Also, we would like to invite you very warmly to hand over your email address so we can send you not excessively large numbers, but selectively and artfully written emails letting you know about our products. I think in the chat there will be a link for you to sign up and sign up for some of our email lists. So I encourage you to do that. Apart from that, everyone, happy holidays. I hope that you and all of the people who are dear to you have a wonderful Christmas, Hanukkah, other winter holidays season. And we look forward to continuing to produce good things for you to read during this season and other seasons.
Cool. Bye, guys.